Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to welcome you to the Laboratory of Bioanthropology and Paleoanthropology. At this moment, I will give you guidance about the practical sessions of forensic anthropology. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the practical sessions will be done fully online. Students have to obey the rules. 1. Students have to watch the tutorial video of the practical guidance. 2. Students have to attend the practical sessions via online as scheduled for each group. And the last one, students have to write a report of the practical work individually and then submit it in Gamble. Then, how do the ways of the practical work? First, students are given a tutorial instruction regarding the materials, the instrument, and the procedures. 2. Students in small group are doing the practical sessions via online meeting as scheduled with the guidance of an instructor. 3. Students work individually to observe the materials to identify the race, sex, and age. And then students will measure the long bones and estimate the stature. And the last one, students have to write and submit the reports. What will students do then? There are 4 tasks in these practical sessions. First, students will determine the sex of a pelvic bone. Second, students will determine the age of pubic symphysis cast. 3. Students have to identify the race of or ancestry of the skulls. And the last one, students will estimate the stature of individuals from long bones. We'll start each materials now. First, determine the sex using the pelvic bones. Well, these are pelvic bones. These are 2 kinds of pelvic bones. Belongs to male and female. Can you identify which one is male, which one is female? Right. My left hand belong to male pelvic bones, and my right hand is female pelvic bones. Now, how could you identify males and females? How to differentiate between male and females? I will show you some characteristics of males and female bones. First, I try to combine the pelvic bones. So these pelvic bones here, the symphysis pubic in front, here, both these pelvic bones belong to male pelvic bones. You can see on the pubic area, the pubic symphysis, and also the subpubic angle or subpubic arc, which is narrow in males and wider in females. I will show you one by one. Well, this is left pelvic bones of males. Some parts of these pelvic bones can be differentiated between males and females, such as this one. This is the greater sciatic notch. The greater sciatic notch of male pelvic bone is narrow. It's deep and narrow if compared to the female ones. This belongs to female. On my right hand is female. The greater sciatic notch here is wider and shallow. And the other part is the ilium. The ilium is flared in female and it's narrower in males. Then, the obturator foramen, the acetabulum, which usually is shallow in female, and also in the auricular surface. Female usually has a characteristic of the existence of preauricular sulcus. Here the preauricular sulcus, which is very obvious in these bones. And also the parturition pit is inside of the symphysis pubis. In the internal side of the symphysis pubis is the parturition pits. Okay, there are some others of the characteristics of pelvic bones that can difference between males and females that you will observe more detail in the picture in the practical sessions. Now move on to the next steps is determine the age of pubic symphysis cast. This is the cast. We use Sakais-Brooks methods. In the Sakais-Brooks methods, it consists of 6 phases, and each phases have its characteristics. Starting from number 1 or first steps, this is pubic symphysis phase 1 of Sakais-Brooks method. It's characterized with the completely rich surface. It belongs to about 15 to 23 years old. It's in the very early stage, the surface is completely rich with no nodules, no bevelings, no symphyseal rim, and no lipping. Then the second phase of the Sakais-Brooks method, or Sakais-Brooks phase, is characterized with ossified nodules. Some characteristic that is obvious is some characteristics that are obvious are ossified nodules, which is very obvious here, and then the dorsal plateau formed, and the ventral beveling start to appear. The third one, or the third phase of the Sakais-Brooks method, is characterized with the ventral rampart. The ventral rampart here exists in the superior and inferior parts of the symphysis. Superiors and the inferiors. And also, in this stage, there is no symphyseal rim and no lipping exists. The fourth phase of this method is characterized with oval outline. The oval outline here is very clear that the face of the symphysis is smoother. The face of the symphysis is smoother. The oval outline almost complete. There's also no symphyseal rim and no lipping here. The next one, or the fifth phase of this method, is characterized with symphyseal rim. So, the symphyseal rim is identified with the marked symphyseal rim here in the margin. There's also a dorsal margin lip, the dorsal margin lip here, and the ventral margin is irregularly lipped. In the ventral is irregular, and in the dorsal is lipped, and it's very obvious. The last phase is the sixth phase of the Sakais-Brooks is characterized with erratic ossifications. In this phase, the ossifications is not regular, and most of them are eroded. There's also irregular lipping, and in the ventral border, it's so to be broken. Yeah, and using this case, you compare with the symphysis pubis in the original bones, and then you identify in which phase of these bones according to the Sakebo-Brooks methods, and estimate the age of these individuals. Don't forget to also include the estimations or define the sex of the bones. Now we're moving to the next task. Number 3 is identify the race or the ancestry of the skulls. We use 3 human races. They are Asian, and then Caucasian or European origins, and Negrite or African origins. So, based on the characteristics that observe in all parts that you can observe, you can compare the characteristics of the 3 skulls. So, which part that we can use to define or to differentiate the characteristics, I will give you an examples from this skulls. This skull belongs to Asian origins or Mongolid. First, we can observe, for instance, the orbits. What is the shape of the orbits? And then the nose, part of the nose or the nasal, and then also the palatum here, and also the mandible. Let's have a look, give you an example of some of the parts. For instance, the nasal bridge. The nasal bridge of the Asian usually is medium. European usually is narrow, or is the narrowest. And in African origin usually is the widest. Then the nasal aperture here. Nasal aperture here, usually Asians have a medium, a narrow in Caucasian or European origins, and wider in, the most widest is in African origins. We can also see the nasal spine. The nasal spine here of the sharpest is appear or exists in European, and no nasal spine observed in African origins. Also, at the base of the nasal, which is called with nasal seal, the nasal seal is characterized in Asian, usually is single and sharp, also in European, but in African origin, it's double and gutter. This is nasal seal here. Then we can observe the shape of the palatum, the palatal arch, the dental arch here, which is parabolic in European and U-shape in the African origins, like this. Yeah, this is U-shape or hyperbolic, and narrow in ASEAN. And then we can also observe the shape of the palatal sutures. The palatal suture here, especially in the transverse palatal suture here in the ASEAN origins or Mongolid, it usually is not straight. It's straight in the Caucasian or in African origins. The other one, you can also see the dental, the tooth or the teeth. The teeth, especially in teeth of Mongolid or Asian origins, usually have a oval shapes, but it's blade in European origins and in African origins. Those about the teeth. Well, you can also observe as many other characteristics that you can observe and then compare between the three skulls from the three races. Right, now we will moving to the next task, which is the identifications or estimations of stature of individual using the long bones. Here are some of long bones, of human long bones that we can use to estimate the stature. First, what bones is this? That's right. This is femur bones. This is left femur bones. And then, what bones? Good. This is tibia. This is humerus. Fibula. Ulna, and the radius bones. All of these bones we can use to estimate the long bones individually or combinations of between these bones. It can be usually two bones. Then how to do the estimations? We will measure the long bone first and then use the formula to estimate, to calculate the estimations of the height using this table. So this table shows the formula to estimate height of individual. This column is a constant that you have to multiply with the length of the bones, length of one or two bones, summary of the two bones, and then plus with the third column here, the value state here used to be added with the length of the bone multiplied with the first column. And the last column, the values are about the standard deviation. So we do not do anything. We do not do anything with this number. Just add with plus minus of these values because it is the standard deviations. Now I will show you how to take the measurements of the long bones. Well, the long bones we use is the maximum long of the bones. The maximum length is the most maximum distance between the most outer parts of the distals, between the distal and the proximal parts of the bones. How to take the measurements is like this. Well, I will show you how to perform the measurements. First, put the long bones on the hard and smooth surface. Yeah, and then using long sliding caliper. Using long sliding caliper, put the pointer at the maximum distance of the most outer parts of the bones, like this. And then read the scale here For instance, in this measurement, it is 44 centimeters here. Yeah. This is an example of how to measure the femur. In the other bones, such as tibia, yeah, tibia is similar. The distance of the most outer part of the bones like this. Yeah, and then read the scale 36.1. And then take the sliding caliper off. Well, after you got the measurements of the bones, it can be 1 or 2. For 2 bones, again, we can use this table. For 2 bones, we can use, for example, femur and fibula, or femur and tibia. Make a summary of the length of the bones, and then multiply with the first constants, add with in the third values in the third columns. So that's all. Then you will get the estimations of the individual stature. Well, these are all these practical sessions. Then students have to make a report based on the observations of the 4 tasks, and then submit the report. And all students should work by individually. Well, this is the end of the information about the practical sessions. Thank you for the attention, and see you in the practical sessions. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.